To our top story, a massive cleanup effort in the Fairfax district, removing piles and piles of trash, bags stacked 5 to 6 feet high, covering the lawn around a home. Neighbors say they have complained about this garbage for years, but what leads a homeowner or anyone to hoard such a massive collection of trash in the first place? Dr. Andrea Papa is double board certified in psychiatry and addiction medicine. She joins me now with more on this sort of psychology of hoarding. Dr. Papa, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Take us inside the mind of a hoarder. What fuels the need to continue to collect so much?
So a hoarder usually has some depression and anxiety sort of underlying. They get anxious and they get obsessive and they wanted to collect things. After they do it, the anxiety is resolved and it decreases. So it really actually makes them feel better doing this. It makes them feel more secure.
Okay, so it really sort of becomes an addiction, a drug, you know, the cure for their anxiety. So we saw with Christina Gonzalez, the reporter out there, and the man who was hoarding all this trash, he's really upset to see that this has all been cleaned out. Very traumatic. How traumatic is that for somebody?
Well, you're taking away his constant, right? This is something that alleviates his stress, likely alleviates his anxiety, and you're removing that, you're taking that away. So that's going to cause significant distress on someone.
And will this just then, they'll want to recreate it, and I would assume, and just collect and collect and collect. When someone might be dealing with somebody in their life who likes to hoard any sort of an item, at what point do you step in?
So, I mean, I feel like all of us may be pack rats to some extent. When it becomes dangerous is when the person is no longer going to school, you know, going to their job, no longer leaving their home, or in this case, living in filth. I mean, this is such a dangerous situation. So when it affects their daily life, or it could affect their physical health, that's when we need to intervene.
Can a person be cured of this sort of hoarding issue? How do you break the cycle?
So you break the cycle by treating the underlying diagnosis, whether it's depression, anxiety, psychosis. Have them see a psychiatrist, have them do therapy. There are actually some really good therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy that helps break the cycle. Can they be cured? Likely they're not going to be cured. They're still going to have some of the, still going to hoard maybe in a little bit less extent as this gentleman's doing. So I would say they cannot be cured, but they can definitely be helped.
You know, I know you're not the doctor of the gentleman who is dealing with this in the Fairfax district, but what would you want to see next for him?
I'd like to get him a mental health evaluation. I think it's very important to kind of see other symptoms that he may be having and see how we could treat him, see how we can help him.
Okay, well, I think you've helped a lot of people who may be dealing with something similar. Maybe it doesn't even need to be to that extent. But you mentioned pack rats, and there's plenty of those out there for sure.
Yes.
It is hard to let go of things. That's for sure.
It is.
Okay,
it
Dr. Andrea Papa, we thank you so much.